And welcome back, everyone. Now we're going to hear from Jeff Adamson, who's a co-founder and CMO, the Chief Merchant Officer of Financial, a technology company that's disrupting Canada's finance oligopoly. Now, what does that mean? Well, he's going to tell us all about that. You may have heard the name before, Jeff Adamson. As a matter of fact, you may have used this service before. That's right. It's the same Jeff Adamson that founded SkipTheDishes. This chat is about not only how to start a business, but how to scale it up to get to the levels that you believe that you can achieve. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Jeff Adamson.
Hi, Jeff. On behalf of Canadian SME, I'd like to welcome you to our one-to-one session at the Canadian SME Summit. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks. Glad to be here.
Very pleased to have you with us this afternoon. Now, Jeff, your background runs deep in entrepreneurship, and you know firsthand the challenges of building a business. Like previous to Neo Financial, you co-founded SkipTheDishes, Canada's leading food ordering and delivery platform. Now, can you share with our audience what has helped most in your startup journey so far? Like what else has been like instrumental both now and throughout history when it comes to helping people start new businesses successfully?
I think that there's a misconception about starting a company, and I think a lot of people think it's all about a great idea. And Skip the Dishes was not a novel idea. There had been people delivering food for a very, very long time. In fact, it was being done in rural India, urban cities in India, at a very, very, very high accuracy for hundreds of years before Skip the Dishes was around. I think the difference, though, and what's really helped us is the people who we were able to really join us on that journey. And at the time when we co-founded Skip and even when co-founding Neo, there really weren't a lot of multi-billion-dollar tech startups being started in the prairies. So at the same time, though, there was also a ton of talent that just wasn't really focused on building a lot of these companies. So what's helped us the most and what continues to be our competitive advantage today is the fact that we have an enormous amount of pent-up talent that we've been able to bring together with the singular mission of building these multi-billion-dollar tech companies in places like Winnipeg or in Saskatoon or in Calgary. So that really is what's been the most helpful, is the people side of it and really putting people in positions where they can succeed.
Great to know. Now, what was the inspiration and motivation behind the launch of Neo Financial? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish through this platform?
Well, there's really two sides to it. There's the consumer side, and then there's the retailer side. And on the consumer side, Canadians aren't really in as good a shape as we may think. Close to, or I think it might be above 50% now, of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck. And for a first world country, for a country that really prides itself on equality and inclusion, we really aren't walking the talk from that perspective. Now, that's a really complex problem to solve. But at the same time, we've seen the big five banks see their profits rise about 100% during the pandemic, while millions of Canadians lost their jobs. So there's this imbalance where you have one sector doing extraordinarily well, while the rest of Canada really struggles financially. So the banking system really is the stewards of the financial relationship with Canadians. So I think it just plays such an important role. And I really believe that Canadians deserve better. If you look at other places around the world, there's been a massive amount of innovation. If you go to Asia, Africa, Europe, South America, you can virtually do everything you want all at the tips of your fingers. There's been tons of innovation, tons of capital pouring into new companies, new ways of doing things. Whereas in Canada, we've really, really lagged behind. And that is in part due to the fact that it's five companies that own 95% of the market share. That's on the consumer side. On the retailer side, this is something that we saw during when we were building Skip the Dishes, was really that the companies that really owned a financial relationship with their customers had a massive competitive advantage. So if you look at companies like Loblaws or Canadian Tire, almost about a third of their profit actually comes from their banking portfolios, which is kind of crazy to think about because you think of Loblaws as grocery and you think of Canadian Tire as everyday household items, but a third of their profit is being made from banking products, credit cards, loans. And they also get an enormous amount of data on Canadians so that they understand their customers better and can create more value for those customers. But it's not really practical for your everyday business, whether that's a larger retailer that's not quite the size of a Loblaws or a small, medium-sized business. It's not practical for them to become a bank and offer these products. And at the same time, the big five banks haven't really had the appetite to offer these products to other companies. So the gap that we saw was really to step in and enable retailers, both large and small, to participate in the huge upside of financial technology by enabling them to issue their own co-branded credit cards, to enable them to leverage transactional data, to connect with customers, understand them a lot better, and do it in a way that creates value to the consumer through things like cashback. And that's really kind of part of the motivation that we saw and the problem that we didn't really see anyone else really solving.
Right. Now, talking about innovation, a startup can be, an excellent way to try something out that might not work. But, small businesses and businesses themselves, they need some assurance before taking that risk. Now, Jeff, what is the best way to decide if it's the right time to start up? Like, how do you determine whether your business idea is viable in the current market?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I don't know that there's a perfect time to start a business because there's so many things that have to go into the timing aspect. And I don't know too many people who have deliberately timed things perfectly. There's a lot of people who had great ideas, but due to market conditions like the 2008 recession or the dot-com bubble, that really made things difficult for them, even though they had a great team and great idea. And on the other side of it, there's some companies that maybe didn't even have a great idea, but because that whole market was growing, their business ends up succeeding. So it can kind of be a bit disheartening to an entrepreneur because you often are kind of riding these massive tides and they can go up or down. I think for me at least, it's really, and even if you think of the pandemic, this has been a massive I'd say boon to many companies, especially for e-commerce. And it's not like many of them started their companies predicting that the pandemic would hit, but a lot of these e-com companies actually saw a huge lift during the pandemic. But opportunities or massive changes often do create opportunities for people because the large companies are often very slow to react to quick changes, whereas as new companies can often seize those opportunities quite quickly. When it comes to testing the ideas, though, I think it's you have to kind of have an individual, you have to have kind of your life set up. And I think for me, I know that when we started Skip, I was only able to do that because I had saved up virtually my whole life. When I graduated university, I couldn't afford a house. So instead of just buying a house, my brother and I actually built one because it was way cheaper to do that. So when it came to starting the company, I was able to go, years without paying myself, really putting everything, all that sweat equity into the company, versus many people because they're living paycheck to paycheck, they're not able to take those risks. So I think you have to be able to build up enough, personal capital, I think career capital and experience, and then try to figure out how do you test that idea in a low risk way before going all in. And you kind of have to go all in because it's very difficult to make it. It's not impossible, but it's more challenging if you're trying to do a business idea and you're not fully invested in it and you're just kind of doing it on the side.
You're quite a risk taker. Now, would you risk it all for the big opportunities, such as branching out into a new industry? Like, what should an entrepreneur do if his or her business idea wouldn't work?
I think first you have to define what work means. So I think it's trying to go in with a really clear goal of what does success look like. And, for me, the goal has always been to learn as much as I can and to have as much fun working with great people. That was my ambition behind Skip originally, and the same thing at Neo Financial. So if your goal is to get rich, then that's going to be a tough one because, you know, those outcomes sometimes are beyond your control. Um, but if your goal is to learn as much as you can, then whether your startup ends up making you a millionaire or not, at least you'll have achieved your goal of learning and building relationships, meeting new people, and you can take those things with you wherever you go. And I think that's part of the mistake that I see people making is they look at starting a business and they think, well, I'm going to have financial freedom, and it's very motivated by money, and money should really be the byproduct, but not necessarily the goal. The goal should be to try to help people, try to learn as much as you can, and to build relationships. That's personally what it is for me, but I can't say what it should be for others.
I know earlier in our conversation you mentioned about the big five. Now, Jeff, innovation and creativity is the lifeblood of any company, but it's really missing from banks. Why is there a lack of innovation in the banking sector, and what impact is it having on Canadians?
Well, I think there certainly is a lack of it. If you look globally, we're being really outpaced by our neighbors to the south, by virtually the majority of the countries in the world. Even African nations are actually leapfrogging us now and coming out with new digital technology that hasn't actually arrived yet in Canada. If you look at a lot of Asian countries, China, Korea, even Russia, for example, they have super apps where you can literally do your banking, your shopping, transferring money, chatting with your friends, all from one app. Here in Canada, you've got, TD. You probably have a different app for your investments, a different apps for your loans. It's very a clunky, very siloed experience. Now, the reasons behind it, I mean, from an outsider's perspective, because I don't work for any of those companies, there's a number of different reasons. One is government protection. I mean, humans in general don't really. I would say if they don't have to do something, they're not going to. And so if you have protection, if you already have 95% of the market, you're already doing pretty well. You're pretty comfortable, and there seems to be an almost written agreement between them where none of them are really pushing the envelope on the other too much. So there isn't a lot of new entrants into the market, and Neo Financial is one of them. And there's a few others. We're starting to see it with companies like Neo and Coho and Wealthsimple, great companies, but if you're not really forced to, then oftentimes you're not. And you see kind of what Amazon has done to a lot of the retail sector. Now, every single massive retailer has, really robust e-com. They have same day delivery now. So you can see that they're forcing other companies to do it. The other part of it is that the technology that underpins the Canadian banking system was actually created in the 1950s. It's really a pen and paper type technology. It's written on a computer coding language called COBOL. And this is one of the oldest coding languages created. And literally, if you want someone to work on COBOL, you have to find someone who retired in the 1980s or 1990s, get them to come out of retirement to work on these systems. So you have these old systems that require so much maintenance. So about 80% of their IT budgets, their technology budgets, are just going into maintaining these archaic systems. And the banks have massive IT budgets. They have multi-billion dollar, like the banking sector has larger budgets than virtually all the venture capital investment that goes into all startups in Canada. That's how much money the banks spend on technology. But just the majority of it just goes into maintaining systems that are just completely out of date. Versus what we've done at Neo Financial is we've built 95% of our technology in-house.
Mhm.
So it'd be a lot easier for us to just take technology off the shelf and bolt it together. But we want the flexibility to provide retailers and customers with the maximum amount of value. So we built things in-house, and that allows us to do things like give customers instant cash back, to personalize the rewards to them in real time. It allows us to do very interesting rewards and loyalty integrations with retailers, things that are just very difficult for traditional banks to do.
Right, less of relying on, different areas and third-party service providers maybe. But Jeff, like, how do you think banks will have to change, the way they work with customers in order to stay competitive in the market?
I think we're already seeing this today. I think it's really not a matter of when, it's a matter of if. And whoever is able to offer the highest quality, convenience delivered at the lowest price will always win. And as new entrants like Neo come into the market, as customers start seeing the difference, I mean, any customer who holds Neo Financial up to a traditional banking app can see the difference from the second that they open the app. So more people really need to be educated on the fact that there are better ways to do your banking. And that's going to come as more and more people get exposed to it. And we're already seeing people today use Neo and start seeing like, wow, like this is such a much more seamless experience. Like it, in the app that we've created, we put a ton of thought into the design that goes into it, the type fonts that are used, the colors and how they play together, the images that we're using from the retailers that we partner with. Every little piece of it has been thought through with the end customer, just obsessing about them. And I don't see that same customer obsession at the banks. And it's not that the banks are bad companies. They underpin our entire financial system. They create, tons and tons of jobs for Canadians. So I don't want to make you think that I'm a bank hater or anything. It's just that they could be doing a lot more, but it's very difficult given their position. Having 95% of the market, they don't have a lot of incentive to do much more. So I think competition is really going to cause them to change, and they have to get back to putting the customer at the center of the experience and start delivering on innovation and technology a lot quicker. Because unfortunately, if they wait too long, it's going to be very hard for them to catch up. And companies like Neo, like Wealthsimple, are growing incredibly fast. And I think the biggest impact that we might be able to have in Canada is actually forcing some of these banks to actually innovate and give more value back to Canadians.
Right. No, customer obsession is an important part of any company. And it's just not, it's not just for the customers, but also vice versa. But Jeff, on the other note, like there are many challenges that small business owners face, and it can be like difficult to know which ones you should prioritize, right? Before we close the discussion today, on a final note, can you please share your key advice to small businesses in order for them to, survive and thrive during these challenging times as we're recovering from it?
Yeah, so I think as a small business owner, they've been hit incredibly hard, and people always say that COVID is, we're all in this together. I don't think that's the case at all, because large retailers have been doing much, much better than small and medium-sized businesses. So there's no one piece of advice that's going to work for everyone. I know that the businesses that we work with here at Neo Financial, we've been really focusing on growth. We've been really focusing on getting them new customers and getting them customers that they already have to spend more with them. And that means that they have to really step up their game on the digital side. We're seeing a massive shift in the way that customers shop, the way that they experience brands. And I imagine that you've probably shopped a little bit more online this last year than you did prior. And customers, they expect the same experience whether they're shopping with Amazon or Walmart or a small, medium-sized business. So you have to be bringing in the tools, the expertise needed in an as economical way as you can to step up your technology and digital game. And that's really one of the pieces that we've been helping out a lot of businesses with, is really helping them in more ways than just bringing them new customers, but helping give them some advice on, hey, like these are some companies that we've worked with in the past that we've seen to be successful working with small, medium-sized businesses. And I think that time is running out for them to delay bringing in these types of new technologies, whether that's e-commerce, whether that's a new POS system, a loyalty program, or digital marketing strategy. These are the things that customers expect now, and if you don't meet customers' expectations, I think we all know what's going to happen.
Right. It's like together we move forward. But I'm glad we had the chance to speak about this crucial topic of, how to start and scale a business, because there's still so much to learn. But thank you so much, Jeff, for taking the time out of your busy schedule and being so insightful. I think our audience would be pleased by hearing from you. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me on. And for anyone who wants to know more, whether you're a customer who just wants a better banking experience, go to neofinancial.com. If you're a business owner who wants to grow, there's information on there. We've got a team, an excellent team of 450 people based here in Calgary and Winnipeg that are working incredibly hard every day to help both customers and retailers. So go to the website, check us out, and looking forward to seeing how this conference goes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jeff.